Dustin, good to see you. Today, another really important question. Who needs an estate plan? I know you provide highly personalized financial planning for clients, and part of that holistic plan is, of course, designing an estate plan. But when I hear estate, I feel like it's for somebody who owns a lot of land or has a lot of money, but that might not be right. Who needs an estate plan?
Well, anyone who doesn't want the courts and the IRS deciding who gets their assets, anyone who doesn't want the courts deciding who gets their children, anyone who doesn't, anyone who wants a family member to be able to make medical or financial decisions for them when they can't make those decisions rather than the courts. Basically, anyone who has family or assets and unfinished business on this earth has a reason to do some estate planning, whether that estate planning is simple planning or something more sophisticated.
That checks a lot of boxes. I am definitely one of those many people. Dustin, well said, and I think that it's important to remind everybody watching that you work with a team of estate planning experts to help you design these plans. And that includes Mark Perkins, who is with Perkins Zayed. We want to say welcome to Mark. Mark, good to have you with us.
Good to be aboard.
Yeah, thanks. So, I want to again break down some misconceptions. I feel like one question I hear a lot is, well, what if my investments already have beneficiaries? Do I really need a will or an estate plan? What's the answer to that?
Absolutely. There's a lot of assets that you can't name a beneficiary on. For instance, real estate or a business. And so a lot of times people will think that everything's fine and covered. And then when they die, a lot of those assets will go through probate. A good way to avoid probate is to make sure that you have those assets covered through either a living trust or, like with real estate, you can even do a transfer on death deed to make sure it transfers the way you want it to transfer. For a business, though, especially, you want a living trust, and you want the trust to own that business so that the trustee of that trust can make sure the business keeps on running beyond the person's death or their incapacity. If they become mentally disabled, you want that business to keep on running smoothly, and a trust can make sure it does so.
Of course.
Yeah, Mark, you mentioned incapacity. A lot of times when we talk about estate planning, most people, their mind goes to what happens to my assets at death, but a lot can happen before then. It's one of the reasons I'm starting to ask my clients, hey, something bad has happened, an accident, an illness, you're now incapacitated. You're not able to make medical or financial decisions for yourself. A good question is, what legal documents do you have in place? Not only in place, but more importantly, on file with all the financial institutions you do business with, relieving those institutions of liability to allow someone other than yourself to access 401k, access an IRA, life insurance, cash values, make real estate transactions or even medical decisions when you can't make those yourself. Mark, can you explain why it's important not only to have those documents in place, but to have those documents on file with an institution before something like an incapacity happens?
Yeah, absolutely. The power of attorney for property is the one that you really want in place, or power of attorney for finance, to make sure that that's in place, that someone can sign your name for you when you become mentally disabled. The problem, though, with those documents, that a lot of institutions want their own power of attorney to be used and not a generic one. So a lot of times, if you have a living trust in place, the trust will own that asset, and then you don't need the power of attorney. And when the trust names a trustee who can act upon your disability, that trustee then can make sure all your financial affairs are being handled properly. But you also do need a power of attorney for healthcare to say who can speak on your behalf if you become mentally disabled to make medical decisions for you.
Yeah, as we take a look at, a typical estate planning and everything that goes into it and all the documents, Dustin, I want to ask one more question then. Are there any strategies that we should be implementing today to ensure that our legacy and our estate plan, everything's carried out the way we intend?
I would start with reviewing beneficiary designations.
Mhm.
That sounds very simple, but it's easier than you think to accidentally disinherit beneficiaries if those designations aren't made
Right.
correctly. Not something we'll discuss today, but you need to know the difference between naming a per stirpes beneficiary and a per capita beneficiary. You want to look at when it comes to probate and taxation, how your assets are structured. Certain assets themselves avoid probate, like life insurance, and life insurance can be a great estate planning tool because it not only passes to the beneficiaries free from income taxes, but structured properly, if you have a large estate, it can pass to those beneficiaries free from estate taxes as well.
Mhm.
And then you want to go to a highly experienced person like Mark, our team over at Perkins and Zayed, to get that expert estate planning advice and advice on the legal documents you need in place. And when you do that, you want to have both your attorney and your advisor at the table, so one hand knows what the other hand is doing. In my opinion, that's the best way to avoid making some unnecessary and costly mistakes.
Absolutely. And only because you're being humble, I will say, and that is something that you obviously specialize in at Mundorf Wealth. So, Dustin, that's important to note. Mark, I do want to ask you kind of the same question. What strategies should people be implementing today? Or on the same note, are there mistakes that you see people making where we can help them kind of set them on the right path now?
Yeah, one of the biggest mistakes I see is when people try to put someone on a joint tenancy with them, thinking that's a good way to do an estate plan. The problem, of course, with that is that now they have access to your accounts, or if they got sued or divorced, then creditors have access to their accounts. Or if they become mentally disabled, maybe that person doesn't do what you want them to do with those accounts. So it's much better to have a proper estate plan in place, like a will and a trust and a power of attorney for healthcare, power of attorney for finance, to make sure that it goes exactly the way you want it to go.
This proactive planning is so important. And again, Dustin, something that you and Mark both specialize in. If somebody has questions about designing an estate plan with you, what's the best way to reach you?
They can shoot me a text at 830-476-2505, or they can reach out on the website to book a free chat at longlivemymoney.com.
All right, Dustin, Mark, thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.